I used to believe that silence was a woman's only shield, a way to hide the bruises on the soul. My father, a man who worked 3 jobs just to keep me in school, used to say that in a world of wolves, the quietest lamb survives the longest. For 8 years, I was that lamb. I lived in the hollow heart of the Sterling estate in Greenwich, a mansion made of glass and steel, where every heartbeat was monitored and every breath had to be perfectly timed. My mother-in-law, Victoria Sterling, treated me like a faulty piece of equipment. She was the matriarch of Manhattan's oldest money, and I was just the scholarship girl from Queens, the one her son had brought home like a stray. "The silverware is dull, Ava," she would whisper, her voice like a razor blade hidden in velvet. "The Sterling name represents a legacy of excellence. You were a nobody when Julian found you. Try not to let your common roots show." I never fought back. I just polished the silver until my fingers bled, feeling the cold metal bite into my skin. And then there was Julian, my husband, the man who owned my world and everyone in it. He didn't love me, he owned me like one of his vintage Ferraris. "Don't get too comfortable in this house, Ava," he would say, never looking up from his phone. "One slip, one public mistake, and I'll have the lawyers erase you. You'll be back in that cramped apartment with the roaches, and Leo stays here. You know I own the judges in this state." That threat, it was the invisible leash around my neck, pulling tighter every single day. If you can feel Ava's struggle and you're ready to see her rise from the ashes, please subscribe to Bitter and Sweet. We bring you deep, emotional stories of betrayal and ultimate power every week. I was a prisoner in a museum of my own life. I managed the staff. I organized the charities. I stood by his side at every gala, wearing the diamonds he bought to keep me quiet. I thought I could endure it forever, just for Leo. I thought I could be the porcelain doll he wanted. But even in a house of glass, there are dark secrets, and one rainy night, I heard a conversation that shattered the glass and my heart forever. The clock in the hall was ticking, like a heartbeat in a graveyard. It was past midnight, and the estate was wrapped in a suffocating silence. I was going to the kitchen for water, but a sound stopped me. A laugh. Not the cold, professional laugh Julian used for his business partners, but something intimate. Something hungry. Julian wasn't alone. "When will the merger be finalized, Julian?" Elena asked, her voice full of a greed that made my skin crawl. Julian smirked, playing with a gold pen. "The Thorne-Sterling merger is almost there. Once the ink is dry, Ava becomes a liability we can no longer afford. The plan is already in motion. A few fake medical records, a staged mental breakdown at the gala, and she'll be tucked away in a private asylum in upstate New York before the first snow falls." The air in the hallway felt like it was being sucked out of the room. They weren't just ending a marriage, they were planning to bury me alive. They wanted to steal my sanity, so they could merge their fortunes without a messy divorce. "And the boy?" Elena asked, her voice sounding like a viper's hiss. Julian didn't even blink. "Leo will be raised as a Thorne-Sterling. He needs a mother with pedigree, not an orphan from Queens who cries in the shower." I didn't scream. I didn't break down the door. I walked back to my room, one slow, agonizing step at a time. For 8 years, I had been the lamb. I had let them shear me. I had let them break me. But as I sat on the edge of my bed, watching my son sleep, I realized the truth. Julian didn't marry a fool. He married a survivor. And if he wanted to play God, I was going to show him exactly what a woman with nothing left to lose is capable of. The next morning, I was the perfect Sterling wife again. I woke up at dawn. I did my yoga. I dressed in the silk dress Victoria had picked for me. I sat with her on the terrace, the Atlantic Ocean sparkling behind us. "You look focused today, Ava," she said, looking at me over her sunglasses. "I had a very long night of reflection, Mother," I replied, my voice as smooth as glass. "I finally realize what my place in this family is." Julian thought I spent my days at the spa. He forgot that before I was a Sterling, I was a straight-A student in forensic accounting. While he was at his late-night meetings with Elena, I was in his office. I wasn't looking for love letters. I was looking for the numbers. I found them: offshore accounts, fake invoices, a mountain of debt hidden behind shell companies. He was building his empire on a foundation of sand, and I was about to pour the water. I didn't go to the local police. Julian owned the police. I went to the one person he couldn't buy, a federal agent named Miller who had been trying to get into the Sterling books for years. "It's all here, Miller," I whispered, the cold wind blowing my hair across my face. The fraud, the embezzlement, and the plan to have me committed. Every document, every recording. Take him down. Miller looked at the folder, and then at me. "This will destroy the Sterling name, Ava. You'll have nothing." I looked at him and smiled. "I've had nothing for 8 years, Agent. I'm just taking my life back." The trap was being set. I started playing my part, acting unstable when Julian was watching. I left the stove on. I forgot my own phone number. I let him see me talking to the walls. I was giving him exactly the evidence he needed for his doctors. I wanted him to be confident. I wanted him to feel like he was winning. Because a man who thinks he's already won is a man who stops looking for the knife at his back. Julian's big night was approaching, the annual Sterling Charity Gala. It was supposed to be the night he announced the merger, and the night he had me taken away. But he was so blinded by his own brilliance that he didn't notice the atmosphere in the house was changing. I had accidentally dropped a set of photos on Victoria's vanity, photos of Julian and Elena discussing their plan to put Victoria in a nursing home the moment the merger was complete. "He's your son, Mother. I'm sure there's an explanation," I whispered, my voice trembling with fake fear. Victoria looked at the photos of Julian and Elena. Then she looked at me. For the first time, she didn't see a nobody from Queens. She saw a partner. "He thinks I'm a relic, Ava," she hissed, her voice cold with betrayal. "He thinks he can cast me aside like an old coat. He has forgotten who built this family." "Everything is set for tomorrow night, babe," Julian said into the phone, his back to me. "The doctors will be in the lobby. One scene from Ava, and it's over. I'll finally be free of that anchor." I listened to his voice, the man I had once loved with all my heart. It didn't hurt anymore. It just sounded like static. I walked up to him and touched his shoulder. "Everything okay, darling?" I asked. He looked at me with pity. "Better than ever, Ava. Better than ever." "Tomorrow, Leo," I whispered to the empty room. "Tomorrow, the cage opens." I had moved the last of the legal funds into a trust for my son. I had secured a safe house in a different state. I had the agents on standby. Julian thought he was the architect of my destruction, but he was just an actor in a play I had rewritten. The gala wasn't going to be a merger. It was going to be a funeral for the House of Sterling. The night of the Sterling Charity Gala. The culmination of Julian's grand deception. The air shimmered with the scent of expensive champagne and the hum of forced laughter. Julian stood on the main stage, bathed in spotlights, a triumphant smile plastered across his face. Elena, in a dazzling scarlet gown, was draped over his arm, her eyes sparkling with the promise of stolen wealth. Victoria sat at the head table, her face a mask of cold anticipation, but I knew the truth brewing beneath her calm exterior. "Tonight," Julian announced, his voice booming through the meticulously designed sound system, "we witnessed the dawn of a new era. The Sterling and Thorne families united in power, united in purpose." He paused, letting the applause wash over him. Then he glanced at me in the crowd, his eyes cold and dismissive. It was the look of a man saying a final, cruel goodbye. He raised his hand, gesturing for the merger contract. The pen hovered, inches from the paper. "Before you finalize that legacy, Julian," I said, my voice, amplified by a hidden microphone, cut through the applause like a shard of ice. The room went utterly silent. Julian froze, his hand suspended over the document. He turned, his confident smile faltering as he saw me. I continued, my voice steady. The esteemed board would like to see the real numbers. I pressed the button on the remote. The massive screens behind him, which were supposed to display the glorious new company logo, flickered and abruptly changed. The room exploded. The elegant facade shattered into a million pieces. Victoria gasped, clutching her throat, her face a ghastly white. Elena, seeing the video of herself, tried to melt into the crowd, but the ballroom doors were now quietly guarded by men in dark suits. Federal agents. Julian stared at the screens, then at me, his face twisting from arrogance to pure, unadulterated terror. You did this?" he stammered, his voice choked. I stood at the edge of the stage, looking up at him. "No, Julian," I whispered, loud enough for the agents to hear. "You did this. I merely provided the spotlight." The sharp click of the handcuffs. It was the most profound silence I had ever heard. Julian struggled briefly, a pathetic, guttural cry escaping his lips. But the federal agents were efficient, merciless. They led him down the steps of the stage, the very steps where he had planned to claim his ultimate victory. I watched him pass, no triumph in my heart, only a deep, weary sense of justice. For the first time, I could breathe without the weight of his name crushing me. Elena Thorne, the supposed socialite queen of Manhattan, was reduced to a frightened common criminal. Her father, the CEO of Thorne Holdings, was shouting furiously at his lawyers, trying to salvage what little reputation remained. But I had made sure the evidence connecting the Thorne family to Julian's fraud was just as undeniable. They would face the consequences together, a legacy united in disgrace. Victoria looked up as I approached. The cold mask was gone. There was no judgment in her eyes now, only a haunting emptiness. "You were always the smartest person in this room, Ava," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I just didn't want to see it. I looked at her, the woman who had made my life a living hell for 8 years. "I don't want your praise, Victoria," I said, my voice steady. "I just want my son, and the deed to the main beach house. As per the prenup." I returned to the estate one last time to collect Leo. The house felt different now. The glass walls, which once felt like the bars of my prison, now looked like simple, transparent barriers. A symbol of what had once been. I walked through the silent halls. The echoes of 8 years of forced quiet seemed to mock the emptiness that remained. I remembered every tear I had shed in that kitchen. Every insult I had swallowed to protect my child. It was all worth it. I went to Leo's room and woke him gently. "Pack your favorite toys, Leo Bug," I whispered, tucking a strand of hair behind his ear. "We're going on an adventure. A long one, just us." He rubbed his sleepy eyes, a small smile on his face. "Is Daddy coming?" I shook my head, my smile soft and genuine. "No, Leo. Just us. We're going to build our own castle." We didn't take much. No expensive jewelry Julian had bought to keep me quiet. No designer dresses Victoria had approved of. Just my son, my worn-out books, and the newfound dignity I carried within me. As we walked out the front door, leaving the opulent prison behind, I didn't look back. The ghost of Greenwich was finally free, finally stepping into the sunlight. The road ahead was open, stretching into an unknown future. For the first time in my adult life, I didn't have a leash. I didn't have a master. I had a bank account Julian couldn't touch and a future he couldn't control. We drove toward the city, toward the airport, toward a new life that was finally, truly ours. We found a place where the air smelled like salt and pine instead of expensive perfume and old money. A place where the only sounds were the crashing waves and the cries of seagulls. I started a small consulting business, helping other women who had been trapped in corporate cages, women who needed a voice to fight back. I used my brain, the very brain Julian dismissed as trivial. My business grew organically, not because of a powerful family name, but because I was good at what I did. I was the woman who had brought down the mighty Sterlings, and people respected that. I didn't need a mansion to feel powerful. I just needed my son's laughter from the next room, and the quiet knowledge that I had fought for my freedom and won. Sometimes, I think about Julian. I hear he's serving a long sentence upstate. I hear Victoria is living in a small studio apartment, alone and forgotten. I don't feel pity for them. They built their lives on the suffering of others, and eventually, the rot in their foundation caused their entire empire to crumble. I am no longer a lamb, and I am no longer a ghost. The glass cage is a distant, fading memory. I am Ava, the architect of my own life. I learned that silence isn't a shield, it's a choice. And today, I choose to speak. I choose to live. And I choose to be free. The world is vast and beautiful, and it is finally mine. The trial lasted for weeks. It was all over the news. The fall of the Sterlings. I sat in that courtroom every single day, not out of hate, but because I needed to see it end. I watched Julian's expensive lawyers try to twist the truth, try to paint me as the unstable wife he claimed I was. They brought in doctors he had bribed. They showed doctored videos of me looking confused. But every time they spoke, I just looked at the jury and handed over another piece of evidence. One by one, his loyal friends turned on him. The men he had played golf with, the women Victoria had invited to tea, they all pointed fingers to save themselves. The social circle that once seemed like an unbreakable fortress was now a pit of vipers. Julian looked at me across the room, his eyes begging for mercy. But mercy is a luxury for those who haven't spent 8 years destroying the person they swore to love. When I finally took the stand, I didn't cry. I told them everything. I told them about the glass cage, about the threats to take my son, about the plan to erase my mind. The room was so quiet, you could hear the clock ticking on the wall. For the first time, the world wasn't hearing a Sterling wife. They were hearing Ava, and they believed every word. Guilty on all counts. The words felt like a heavy weight being lifted off my chest. Julian was led away in handcuffs, and for the first time, he didn't look back at me. He was no longer a king, he was just a number in the system. The trial was over, and the legacy he had killed for was officially buried under the weight of his own crimes. After the trial, I went to see my father. He had died 3 years ago, still believing I was happy in my Greenwich mansion. "I'm out, Dad," I whispered, placing the rose on the cold stone. The lamb didn't just survive, she won. The rain washed over my face, and it felt like a baptism. I was leaving the girl who lived for others behind, and finally becoming the woman I was meant to be. Victoria reached out to me once. She sent a letter, written on cheap paper, asking for money. She said she was living in a studio apartment, that her friends had disappeared, that the Sterling name was a curse. I read the letter, and I felt a flicker of pity. But then I remembered the magnifying glass, the insults, and the way she watched Julian try to destroy me. I didn't send money. I sent her a list of local charities and the number of a social worker. I decided to use my share of the legal settlement to start a foundation. Not a foundation for galas and champagne, but one for women who had been trapped in golden cages, just like mine. I wanted to be the bridge that I never had. Every time I helped someone escape, a piece of my own soul healed. I was turning my trauma into a lighthouse for others. Leo doesn't ask about Julian much anymore. He's busy being a kid. He's making friends who like him for who he is, not for his last name. I watch him run, and I know I made the right choice. The Sterling fortune was a poison, and we had finally bled it all out. We were starting from 0, but for us, 0 was a beautiful, honest number. Life on the coast was simple, but it was busy. I became the architect of more than just my own life. I started working with architects to design safe houses that didn't feel like prisons. I wanted them to be filled with light and glass, but the kind of glass you can look out of, not the kind that keeps you in. My work was getting noticed, not as Julian's wife, but as Ava Thorne. Strength isn't about how much you can endure, I told the crowd. It's about knowing when to stop enduring and start fighting. I looked at the faces in the audience, faces of people who had their own struggles. I saw hope, and it was the most beautiful thing I had ever designed. Julian was behind bars, but his victim was finally standing in the sun. Every time that lighthouse beam hit me, I felt a sense of rhythm. My life finally had a tempo that I controlled. No more walking on eggshells, no more faking smiles. If I wanted to be sad, I was sad. If I wanted to scream at the ocean, I screamed. I was no longer a porcelain doll. I was the lighthouse. People ask me if I regret those 8 years. I tell them, I regret the pain, but I don't regret the lessons. Those years taught me exactly how much I could survive. They taught me that the person Julian tried to kill was the only person who could actually save me. I was the ghost of Greenwich, but ghosts are powerful, because you can't kill what has already died and been reborn. The horizon is a funny thing. No matter how far you walk, it's always there, waiting for you to catch up. For the first time, I'm not running away from the past. I'm walking toward the future. Leo is growing up fast, and he has his mother's eyes. But he has his own name now. He is Thorne, and he is free. The tide comes in, and it washes away the footprints. The sterling legacy is gone. The glass mansion is a museum for the curious. The scandals are old news. All that's left is this moment. The salt on my skin, the wind in my hair, and the hand of my son in mine. I am no longer water. I am the shore. I am Ava. I am a mother. I am an architect. I am a survivor. And for the first time in my life, I am happy. The cage is open, the glass is broken, and the sky is finally mine. Thank you for joining us for this epic journey of resilience and justice on Bitter and Sweet. Ava's story is a reminder that even in the darkest glass cages, the light of truth can never be fully extinguished. If Ava's strength touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. We will see you in the next chapter of life. This has been a Bitter and Sweet production.